You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
This song is called Alice's Restaurant, and it's about Alice and the restaurant. But Alice's Restaurant is not the name of the restaurant. It's just the name of the song, and that's why I call the song Alice's Restaurant. Except that this is in stores this week, where we talk about comic books that are in stores this week, which is why we call the show In Stores This Week. Why does it work when Arlo Guthrie does it, but not when I do it?
You know, the reason why it doesn't work is you don't slow it down and do a little more southern kind of a homey style voice.
Except that he's from like New Hampshire.
It doesn't matter. This is how he talks. So if you said the show is called In Stores This Week, even though it's about stores or books that are in stores this week, there is no store called In Stores This Week.
I'll just be honest. I just don't think anyone could replicate Arlo Guthrie's timing on the greatest Thanksgiving song ever written.
It is. That, yeah.
But this is Thanksgiving week, and we have Thanksgiving week's worth of comics, which is to say it's a little bit of a light week.
Yeah. But if we talk this way, it's going to make everything go slower.
Yeah, but no one is going to stick around and watch, Dan. Like, if you start doing that, then I'll start doing Bob Dylan, and it'll just sound like nasally mumbling.
Well, see, that's the difference between Arlo Guthrie and Bob Dylan. Dylan is much more nasal. He's much more up here, where Arlo is much more down here, talking about things that everybody talks about, but nobody actually talks about.
Here's the show, folks.
I did, you know, we had talked about this before, Dan. I did write almost 3/4 of a verse of a Alice's Restaurant parody.
Yeah.
About you can get anything you want at your local comic shop.
Yep.
Accepting the things you can't. Which, you know, is fair because like they don't sell like bananas at the local comic shop. But
have you asked them to?
The parody didn't come out. Welcome into In Stores This Week, everybody. I am producer Kyle. That there is Jay, and that is Dan. And this is the show where we talk about books that are in store this week. We're having a little bit of fun because I think we all have a little bit of post-Thanksgiving, pre-turkey tryptophan preparation going on, which has made us all a little punchy.
I just realized how much I look like Gallagher, and it kind of scared me a little.
You do know I'm sending you a sledgehammer for Christmas now, right?
Sure. And a watermelon?
No, you have to do your own produce shopping.
I went looking on Google today, and I saw Dan's dead body from Dexter. Now I'm going to go watch the episode. We'll watch the episode later tonight.
Yep.
So I know we have a bunch of stuff to get to, and we have a bunch of comic books to talk about. But I have to tell you guys, I ordered Bob Evans for dinner. And I ordered a Diet Coke, and they called me, and they go, do you want the big Diet Coke or the regular Diet Coke? And in my life, I believe you always buy the big Diet Coke because you're always going to drink Diet Coke. Came in this bag.
What is that?
It is a half-liter Diet Coke.
KFC has that now, too.
But there's no place for the straw, or I would have just drank it out of the bag.
No, you pour it into a cup.
Right, I did that.
Family size.
I did that, but if I had known this would have existed and it had a straw hole, I would go to Bob Evans every day.
By the way, you realize that when you start your thing, I ordered Bob Evans for dinner. Us here in the West Coast don't know what the hell a Bob Evans is.
It's true.
So it sounds like you just hired yourself a male prostitute, and you know, you enjoy yourself.
So funny story. Bob Evans is a family style restaurant, much like Alice's Restaurant. which is just not the name of this restaurant. It's just the name of the song about the restaurant. Anyway,
The restaurant's called Bob Evans.
no, I had pancakes, eggs, and sausage for dinner. But Bob Evans from not far from here, and my friend was the orderly at the hospital when Bob Evans died, and actually was responsible for freezing Bob Evans sausage.
Oh man, train didn't even get on the rails.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to In Stores This Week, where we talk about everything but the freaking comics.
Hey, did you guys? Well, still got one. You know, we've had the problem with the titles wrap around.
Yeah.
On the side, they don't do that in PowerPoint when I'm working on it. When I'm putting it together, it has something to do with the way it scales for StreamYard. And so I made some adjustments this week, and we got almost right. We got one that's wrong.
Star Wars.
Nope, two. The Rocketeer and Star Wars. Stupid flying people. So let's start off with Kamen Rider 01, number 1, which is written by Brandon Easton. Go ahead, Jay.
This wasn't that bad. I know. Weird way to open it.
Yeah.
It had pretty good art. The thing about this was it read like the cheesiest anime I've ever seen, though. Like the one-liners, the calling out ridiculous moves, like the briefcase fire thunder tiger claw bite, like things like that. Like I had fun with it, and I would suggest if there's anybody out there that's like an over-the-top anime fan, to pick this up and read it. There are parts I'm pretty sure that I laughed at that I wasn't supposed to laugh at, but I laughed at it. I liked it, though.
You know, Kyle, we've been talking about coming up with a new name for the show.
Wasn't that bad.
Wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Or it can't be that bad.
John, this is from Titan.
Titan Comics, yes, John.
Yeah, Titan used to send us stuff, and then suddenly they stopped, and then this popped up in my email today, this week. It's like, all right.
Titan hasn't had anything out really in a minute that hasn't been Doctor Who.
But I've read Doctor Who.
But they just picked up the Conan the Barbarian.
Yes.
License. I almost said Conan the O'Brien. But the Conan the Barbarian license. So there's something to that. I will say this, and I don't know, because, we're all different ages. We're all, kind of different time zones in terms of our age here. Kamen Rider is one of those things that if you don't know Kamen Rider, this might be a tough thing to jump into. It assumes a level of knowledge with regard to Kamen Rider that wouldn't be hard if you read Wikipedia. But if you walk into the shop and say, oh, this is a cool cover, I'm going to buy this and read it, read Wikipedia first. You need to know a little bit about what Kamen Rider is and the mythos that comes from it, and then all of the things that have been stolen from it, or ripped off that are basically ripoffs of Kamen Rider, to fully understand this book. But if you are a Kamen Rider fan, it's very fun. It's very nostalgic. I wouldn't say this is the greatest comic book ever written. I wouldn't even say it's the greatest comic book Brandon Easton has written. But it may be the one that has the most rereadability if you're a Kamen Rider fan.
Okay, first thing, the greatest comic book Brandon Easton has written has got to be the Andre the Giant graphic novel. If you watch the Kamen Rider show, you're going to love this, because it's the show. It's Power Rangers, it's VR Troopers, it's that era, it's that show. So it's right up there with that. By the way, the parody of this would definitely be Ramen Riders. The art's good. The story, it's like I said, if you grew up watching Power Rangers, that type of stuff, and this is for you. This is exactly what it is. It's got the silliness of it's morphin' time, You know, it's got that going for it. Yeah. So, yeah, if you enjoy those, or even from a nostalgic point, you'll actually enjoy this. It's well put together. The art's good. Brandon really picks up that feel. I don't know if he ever. I don't think he ever wrote for like the Power Rangers and stuff. You know, Matt Hawkins did, oddly enough. But yeah, this is that. So,
And for those of you who don't know what Dan is referring to, Power Rangers is basically a Kamen Rider ripoff. So, Saban stole it from Kamen Rider. Okay. Oh, why did Dad do that? Okay. Robin Hood Last Stop.
I wish.
Oh, we're all thinking it, Dan.
They're trying to get every drop out of this storyline. It was an okay story. It was self-contained. You didn't need a lot going into it. They do the Kyle's favorite "What Happened Before" section, you know, and the art's not normal Zenescope work. It felt more like something you would see at Scout or Vault in a horror book from Colin Bunn, but the story's decent. The thing behind it is supposed to be a Wendigo, which I've never seen a Wendigo look quite like that, but I guess I'm used to the Yeti looking thing that Marvel always did when it brought Hulk and Wolverine. But it's a pretty straightforward story. It is right up there with most of the Zenescope books. It just feels like, again, the format they've got now is a little tiresome. You know, I think that's the problem with everything. Everything's a standalone, and it's not. It's an ongoing series. It's not an ongoing series. So, but
Yeah, I mean, I like Robin Hood. It's maybe the character from Zenescope I've collected the most of in terms of like my Zenescope stuff was always like the Death Eater saga, and I would buy the big crossover books from them and a few other things here or there. But this is the character I collected the most, and this seemed to do a fine job at telling a story with Robin Hood. Beyond that, it was so incongruous and so like nothing that it could even possibly be related to. It felt like we're introducing a new character.
I think we were.
Right? And then you have a Wendigo that until they said that's what it was, I didn't know that's what it was. Right? Like, if I don't know what the bad guy is, I don't have any kind of... There's no stakes.
I thought it was Krampus.
Right. Like, I'm like, is this a Christmas thing at Thanksgiving? Like, what is happening? Why is this reindeer eating people?
I agree. I think they were introducing a new character, but it's hard to believe because it's a guy.
Right. But then at the same time, it felt like they were maybe introducing a new Robin, which they're not. But they weren't giving you enough of what makes Robin Robin to have it stand up. So to me, it just was a weak exercise in trying to get something out with every character that you own.
Jay?
Well, I'm always happy seeing a creature that's not used a ton. And, granted, this isn't your typical Wendigo or Wendigo, however you say it. But I thought it was kind of cool. It was nice to not see sea monsters again.
Jay's just happy they're not using Lovecraft characters.
Okay, yeah.
They are. They talk about Narlotiotep in it.
Okay, well, for the uneducated...
I was going to not.
For the uneducated, Dan, I don't know what that is, so...
It's a Lovecraft character.
I was going to not poke the bear so much.
I haven't read enough of Robin to know that she could do what she does at one point in this book. I thought that was kind of cool. I had no. Oh, I had no idea she could do that. It's not a terrible story by any means. I like the fact that it's Robin and not Robin and 8 different other characters. But I do wish they would stop with the inner monologue boxes. There's so much inner monologue exposition boxes all over this book. At least they cut down on the you want to know about this, read this boxes in this one. But man, these exposition boxes in these Zenoscope books are just like getting ridiculous. But no, wasn't that bad, but it's not something I would pick up. If you're a Robin fan though, maybe.
What's up, Kenneth? And I know I haven't shouted everybody out in the comments, but we appreciate y'all being here. Say hi if you haven't already. Well, we talk about, this is not the cover of the book we got, but I could not find a savable copy of the cover of the book we got by the time I realized I had forgotten to put together the PowerPoint. So, this is the Rocketeer Complete Deluxe Edition by Dave Stevens.
This is basically everything Dave did of the Rocketeer. This is all the stories he did. These are all the pinups he did of the Rocketeer and Betty, or Jenny, excuse me. No, she's Betty in the Rocketeer. She's Jenny in the movie.
Yep.
But it's also got some of his handwritten notes. It has sketches. It has the page designs or the layouts. I mean, just if you are a fan of the Rocketeer, yes, it's the same pages and stuff we've seen before. But again, they look great. I think this is an oversized book, but this also has all this behind the scenes stuff. This is showing Dave's process, and I am just blown away by this book. It is gorgeous.
It
there's
gives
little
me...
things.
Good.
I'll say, and you find out little things like there is the famous page he drew of Betty posing for a photographer when gangsters walk in. And it's always been believed that he took it, he drew it from Betty Page pictures. But we find out in there and we see his wife at the time, Brink Stevens, actually posed for that picture. And we see her posing in it. So, that's something I don't think most people know, that they just assumed that, he took a picture of Betty Page, but he didn't. He drew it from his wife at the time.
The big oversized hardcovers that DC has done, like the annotated Watchmen, annotated Sandman, those series, this gives me that vibe.
Yeah.
In that this is like the annotated Rocketeer. This is... I have the 2015 release of the Complete Rocketeer. I will definitely be looking into picking up the deluxe because of all the added stuff. Again, it's your classic Rocketeer stories. So,
yeah.
Real quick, Jay, before you start,
Yeah.
all you guys talking about having a half day in the comments tomorrow. What is a half day? Some of us are working Thursday. All right.
For you, a half day is 12 hours.
Send bag soda.
So naturally, with this being 256, 286 pages, something like that, skimmed it. But beautiful tribute page to Dave Stevens in the beginning of this. I read that too. I will be going back and reading this. Until this show, I had only ever watched the movie. I had never read any of the comics. But this one is where I can fully jump in because this is before Cliff even gets the rocket pack. So I was like, okay, so this is a jumping on point for somebody like me who's never read anything. Because I think what we read was part of a series, and it was like he had already been the Rocketeer for a while.
Yeah, it's newer stuff we read by Steve Mooney.
Yeah, so like this was super cool.
That?
Yeah, I thought we did. Yeah, we did.
I thought we did. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, this was super cool. I thought we did. Yeah. Yeah. I thought we did. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, this was super cool. I thought we did. Yeah. Yeah. I thought we did. Yeah. 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 But I'm excited to read it. Like I know that today, if I would have started any farther than I got, I probably would have wasted time reading the whole thing and not gotten to another book. So I'm excited to read it though. John, I think it's either 256 or 286.
Yeah. By the way, just senseless trivia since we have extra time today. The director of the Rocketeer movie, Joe Johnston, is also the director of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and the guy that he's the guy that created the Millennium Falcon. So,
Definitely worth the watch, Ed. But I would say it's maybe not the most faithful adaptation of the comics. I mean, you could just start with the girlfriend's name is different and go from there. Um, but it's definitely an entertaining film. I definitely prefer the original comics to the film, but I mean, it's a
the movie is
good
brilliant.
double feature.
Yeah, the movie is great. They changed the name because they didn't have the rights to Betty Page. So Disney was like, no, let's not. We'll just go with give her a new name. And it's Billy Campbell, it's Jennifer Connelly, it's Alan Arkin. Yeah, it's well worth watching, and it's a great family movie too.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably one of the best superhero movies out there, just pure comic book superhero movies. So this for me is on level the first Iron Man movie.
All right, so the next book, I'm gonna go first, and I'm gonna say it this way: "Hey, you kids, get off my lawn!"
Yeah.
Everything about Siren's Gate, and I said this issue 1, is a miss for me. However, I believe that what Shannon Mayer is doing is something that is the future of comic books in a way that I don't think I understand. The AI assisted art, the way the writing is, and the way the dialogue is laid out in the book, I think there's definitely a place for it in comics. But I think I'm an old man who's set in my ways and am just uncomfortable with it. That said, it's beautiful to look at. It's not a hard or heavy read in any way. It just, I don't know. It's like when they changed the spelling of the Sci-Fi Network. It took me like a couple of years to get used to, and I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
Real quick, and also Timothy Dalton's the bad guy. Former Bond Timothy Dalton's the bad guy in The Rocketeer. Definitely worth it.
He's so great.
I have been watching people try to perfect this 3D art since the creation of Poser, the software package to do that. And I have got to say that Shannon has done some of the best work on it. They fit into the backgrounds better. It feels more realistic than they have been. So this is definitely a step up, but that's still a process. And so where I see where Kyle's coming from, and I still think it's going to get better and better, but this is definitely in that vein. And I think Shannon's doing some great stuff here. Story wise, this very much reminds me. I mean, it's urban fantasy. It feels kind of like a Buffy episode. So, you know, if you're looking for that type of stuff, if you're a fan of the old Buffy series or of urban fantasy novels and stuff, that's the story that's going on. You got werewolves and vampires and all sorts of stuff, but it definitely has that feel to it. So that soap opera urban fantasy feel. So if you picked up the first one, it's continuing. You know, John says he loved the first one, so it's going to keep it right going, John.
In fact, I would tell you, if you love the first one, I actually think the story is a little better in this one. See, and I had a problem with the story in the first one. I think the story in this one is better. And it's not that the art isn't pretty to look at. The thing that I just can't get over is the word bubbles being text message bubbles. Like, it literally reminds me of one of those choose your own adventure phone games. And I mean, it's either that or this thing is a complete and total AI art project. I want to get into this, but like I said though, the story is getting better. I think if I can just get over my little thing about how the word bubbles and it just looks like people texting back and forth, maybe, but I don't see that changing. I mean, they've already done it in 2 issues. Why would they change it now? I don't know. I'm hoping the story will bring me around to the book. But
yeah, I don't think I don't remember if I said it or not. I enjoyed this story much more than I enjoyed the first one for sure. But I'm with you, Jay. It's like it just feels like he's doing something here that's new and different, and I'm not there yet.
yeah.
All right. I have a question, and this is the moment of the show where I ask for a Ginkgo biloba sponsorship. Have we read the first 2 volumes of this, the first 2 issues of this?
We read the first one, and it had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going completely insane going, I have a vague recollection of this title, but not of any of this stuff.
Not completely, no.
This is not why you're going completely insane.
Oh,
Or
no.
you're going completely insane. That's another debate we can have off air.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
But-
not up
but
for debate. There's a definite diagnosis there, Dan.
Yeah. I have a different question. When the hell is this supposed to take place? I don't remember Poe and Finn having time to go on a side mission during the timeline of the last 3 movies.
Oh, it's when they underutilized them in the second and third movies.
Before
Wow,
General
Jay?
Organa dies.
Is that Jay's mic drop moment?
Yes, because I love these 2 characters and they were totally underutilized in the rest of the series.
Is this Jay's version of calling out Kathleen Kennedy?
No, probably calling out.
Daisy,
No,
take it over.
the guy that does Knives Out. The writer-director of the second Star Wars movie.
The
Ryan
not
Johnson?
good one. Got it.
Ryan Johnson.
The not Jar Jar Abrams one?
Misa don't like the trilogy.
It's true. I never actually really cared about these characters in the movie either. The problem with the prequel trilogies is not enough giant, basically upright walking dogs for me. You need more Wookiees for me to get interested. Right. And so I don't have I thought this was a fun story.
Yeah.
But what is it and why is it and why should I care? That said, this is Star Wars from Dark Horse, which is very different from Star Wars from Marvel. And so because of that, I put aside a lot of the other who is this, why is this, and why do I care that would normally cause me to hate this book from Marvel. And I'm going to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a fun little romp. If Star Wars was a half-hour series instead of a movie, this is like one of those filler episodes you get before you come down to the 3-part season finale.
Yes. I just kept waiting for him to switch over to Mark Spector, and it didn't happen.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a cute story, and again, it's nice to see Poe and Finn actually doing something together. But I don't know where it fits. Had they not had General Organa in it, it could have been anywhere. It could have been after, it could have been anywhere. But the fact that she's in it puts us squarely between the end of the first movie and halfway through the second movie, and or the third movie, and they seem really busy during that whole period. So, I don't know. But it was cute. It's a good, fun, family-friendly book.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to agree with y'all. It's a fun little Star Wars adventure. I'm a casual when it comes to fandoms. Any of them, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Trek, all of them. I like them. I'm not that deep in the lore of any of it though. But I really enjoyed this. The art was a little weird to me at first because it was a bit too cartoony, but pretty soon I felt like it fit the story. The more I read, um, like I said at the beginning of this, I was a fan of Poe and Finn, and I kind of wish they were better utilized in the movies. Like I said, I thought when this trilogy was coming out, I really thought Finn was going to be the main focus, and then he kind of just became the side character. But that's whatever. Regardless of that, I thought this was a really good read. It's one of those, as Kyle says, turn your brain off and just have fun with it.
All right.
So you're saying it's not that bad?
It's not that bad.
All right.
I think Jay now has a tagline.
We're going to get Jay a t-shirt.
There you go.
All right. Before we move on with books for this week, I want to take a second and remind you guys that we are off on Thursday. We will be re-airing some of the best content from the last month or so, including two great interviews that Dan has done with Alex Packnadal and then today with Kevin Van Hook.
Nice.
As well as Jen's interview from yesterday, if you missed it, with Dan DiDio and the whole crew from Frank Miller Presents.
Joe Prado, Philip, and
yes. And also included in that is Jen's interview from a couple weeks ago with Dan Jurgens, celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Death of Superman, as well as some other stuff, including something that most of you probably haven't seen. It was one of our regulars on the Fat Jack Show wrote a list of things that he's thankful for from the Fat Jack Show to celebrate Thanksgiving, and it's both funny and poignant. And so we're going to re-air that clip from that show on Thursday. Nice. In the meantime, we have shows tomorrow, including the Dan Wickline Show, where Dan will be talking about.
We're at the season finale of Andor. Talk about different Star Wars, hyperspace stories, Andor. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fallout from Bob Chapek and Bob Iger swapping at Disney, and the fact that Blade now has a writer and director again.
Cool. John, those will air at 5:00 on Thursday. Or I have to check the football schedule. It will air not at the same time a football game is starting. We'll make an announcement on social media for sure, but plan for 5:00 on Thursday. Okay. We'll be back to normal scheduled programming on Friday with the debut of season 2 of Nerd Killer Warfare, which is our super fun debate game show, and it's a special edition featuring myself and Dan, as well as Mark Blair from Nerd News Now, and Brainy Singh, who is Taji Beats from the Dance Party, doing a special edition with sitcoms, and all of the prizes that were won that night by our participants went to charity, including Comics for Vets and the Hero Initiative. So maybe tune in to watch that at 6:00, and then stay tuned after that. Nick and I will be here with the art show, the original art experience, at 7. Like always.
Can I throw a quick plug?
Plug.
If you guys are looking for a great pickup of digital comics, Dynamite and Dynamic Forces are doing their 30th anniversary right now. They're doing a humble bundle with proceeds going to World Central Kitchen, which is this amazing charity group led by Chef Andres. who will go to disaster areas or places like the Ukraine, stuff like that, set up kitchens and start feeding people with some great chefs. And it's a wonderful charity. And they're doing like $365 worth of comics, and you get to pay what you want for it. But it's only about 3 more days. So go to Humble Bundle, look under books, under bundle books, find the Dynamite or Dynamic Forces 30th anniversary, and pay what you want, and a proceed goes to charity.
Thank you for
Very
your
cool.
service, John.
Yeah, John. All right. So we're going to come back. But before I bring it up on screen, we've talked on this show before about how comics have really long titles now. It used to be Superman, and now it's Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, Book 1, Love in the Wasteland, Chapter 1, The Tower in the Sea.
Oh, my goodness.
Have we jumped the shark in terms of including every word in the dictionary in the title?
They're cheating at school.
Now, I'll go first. This was until I read the Frank Miller books, which was after I made the PowerPoint, or just before I made the PowerPoint. This was my favorite book of the week. I love these kind of odd takes on post-apocalyptic world. I love the idea of a person who has just collected every vending machine they could get their hands on, and it's their entire storeroom of like food and drink. I like the idea of having a book pool. Like everything about this hit me, and then we get to the end, and I see a character that's reminiscent of one of my favorite Josh Williamson books. But I see this character that's definitely grizzled and seen some stuff, man, and setting up for a much more interesting tale than you thought it might be. Jason Aaron is one of my favorite writers, so this is a book that I quite enjoyed, even if it did have more tentacle monsters than I'm generally comfortable with.
I thought this was
Not bad.
well, that's kind of obvious with me now. This was kind of like Waterworld with monsters at the beginning of it. It was a little predictable at some points. The art kind of reminded me of Hard Eyes, and there's even the Maceo, I think is his name. He kind of actually reminded me of Lupe, because I thought this kid was insane. Just the crazy things he was doing, and just the my wife on caffeine talking that it felt like he was doing. I'm going to be super honest, though. I was a little bored, but this is one of those books where even if most of the story bores you, when you hit that last page, that's what got me. And I was like, oh, okay, so this isn't going to be what I thought it was going to be like. So I'm very interested to read issue 2 of this one.
Issue 2, the 18 words later.
Yeah.
All right. I need a moment here. Boom. I want some representatives from Boom, from Scout, from Volt, from IDW. Come, just all you indie guys, come on in. Bring it on in here.
It's the art, isn't it?
Look, I get that you're trying to go with something a little quirky, a little fun, but you're all doing it. You're all doing these end of the world books, and it's getting old. It's getting boring. We've seen it. We've done it. And it's not interesting. They're boring. Yes, there's the crazy person, and you're not even coming up with good reasons why the world ends. You're not even giving us that. We're giving these just little strange people dealing with the end of the world. And we're supposed, all the vending machines pulled together. You know what? I used to fill vending machines when I was in college. That food would have gone bad so quick, and you've got him living there for years. You have to change that vending machine food regularly. It goes bad.
Them
So
Cheetos be stale.
stop. Move on from End of the World. Remember when everybody was doing zombie books and finally we went, oh, we've gone too many? Or vampire books? We're there. It's time to move on. No more End of the World with quirky people. Just stop.
I will say this. There's one redeeming thing. There's one thing that we haven't really talked about that I think is going to be a thing. And that's, we realized at one point that Masio, or however you say his name, is having a trauma response to a personal loss that is revealed in the book. And I think that gives a little bit of credence to his crazy. You know, this is a person who doesn't know how to have a trauma response, having a trauma response. Which, okay. Now do something with it. If you don't, then issue 2 is going to be one of those books that I go, oh, well, I was really excited for this, but it turns out to be a piece of garbage. So, all right.
It's the end of the world. Everybody's having a trauma response.
I really love Dan's rant.
He's having a different trauma response.
Yeah, I'm having a trauma response watching all of these or reading all these frickin' end of the world stories.
Speaking of end of the world stories, a book we read last week and had to remember till this week.
I'll go.
Bloodshot Unleashed #3. Go ahead, Jay.
I'll go with this one. So, Sean and I were actually talking about that this book this morning, and I was telling him, I said, "Man, this series is still, to me, excellent. Excellent. If not for another book on this list, this probably still would have been my favorite book this week." But when I was talking to him about it, he goes, "This one kind of felt weak." And I was like, "Well, why is that?" He goes, "Well, it just felt like it was kind of slow." And I said, "Well, and here's what Valiant does better than any company, in my opinion. They had another character in this book with Bloodshot. Valiant is so good when they do that. Like, take everything I've said about Zenoscope when they do it, complete opposite. Valiant knows how to work other characters into their books and make them feel like they should be there. And I told myself, well, maybe it was a little slower pace like that because they were introducing this character. Or not introducing him, but showing that this character was in the book with Bloodshot." And he thought about it for a second. He goes, "Actually, that makes more sense." I said, because if you think about it, once you get to a certain part of the book and you get down to what looks like, again, a Cthulhu monster, the action's still there, the gore's still there. I love the character that they brought in. He's in my top 5 Valiant characters. And it just felt organic. It didn't feel like a forced kind of, hey, we're just going to shove this character in here. It felt like he needed to, not needed to be in there, but it just felt like an organic placement. But I still love this book. This series so far, honestly, is one of the best Bloodshot series I've ever read.
Yes, John, this book is still great. It's
100%.
a little confusing in the beginning because there's a moment where there's like 4 conversations going on. You've got a guy making a speech in front of people, another guy wording, kind of talking under himself or under his breath to someone who's not there or that we don't see. Then we have another guy being talked to by an imaginary thing. And all the while is going on, you've got quick little flashbacks telling how we got here and a narration. So I literally had to start the book twice to kind of, I needed a whiteboard and some red string and stuff just to figure out all the Once we got past that, though, and once, like I said, when I started the second time and kind of figured out what everything was going on, they bring in another character, and I don't think it's a surprise. Can we just say who the other character is?
No, I don't care.
Yeah, they bring in Exo-Man of War. But they bring him in such an organic way that Bloodshot's quest to take care of the spent shells, and makes perfect sense why Exo's in on this one, because it's kind of a dual purpose villain. So, yeah, I again, this is Valiant is hitting on all cycles right now with the Bloodshot Unleashed, with the Shadow Man series that just wrapped up, and then the Shadow War. But it's been a while since we've seen an issue of the Shadow War, and even the Archer and Armstrong series was really good recently too. So I don't know what's going on with Valiant, why it seems like we're only getting this book, but hopefully they get whatever it is straightened out and we start getting more, because they really are doing some great stuff over there.
Just one more thing before Kyle gets started, since we could talk about EXO. I told Sean, I said, well, this is also probably because EXO is about to have a new run pretty soon too, isn't he?
Yes.
So this was a great way to introduce people to EXO before he gets his own. Okay. Go ahead.
I don't really have a whole lot to add. Jay did most of the work there. I don't like Bloodshot as a character. Until now. Like, it was a character that I didn't like, but this series has made me like him.
Okay.
I don't particularly care for a lot of the non-EXO characters in the Valiant universe, but we've had a number of series now that have made me like characters I didn't like, and that is the greatest compliment I could pay to a book with a history of, I've read Bloodshot, I just don't like it. To change my mind in something like this is an extremely hard thing to do, and Valiant seems to be doing it with relative ease. So, whatever you're doing, Valiant, don't stop. Don't listen to the other people. Don't listen to the companies. Don't have titles that are 37 words long. Yeah. Don't have an end of the world book. Whatever. Even though this is an end of the world book, like, let's be real. Don't fall to pieces like so many other companies have. Keep doing what you're doing because you're doing it right. So, all right. Who wants to go first? Go.
I have not. I mean, I remember reading the Ronin book years and years and years and years and years ago. Back before paper. Philip Tan's artwork. I got to start by saying Philip Tan's artwork on this is just freaking gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
But I know they wanted to go black and white, but I wish they would have gone the Sin City route and put at least one other color in there, because the pages get a little muddied. Maybe in print it'll be easier because we read it digital. But yeah, it would have been. I think having that one extra color in there could have really made this pop a little more. That said, that's probably my only negative critique on this book. It is well drawn, well written. It is gorgeous. I mean, if you're going to kick open the door and say, we're starting a new publishing company around a single creator, well, this is the book you launch it with. This is kicking down the door and just getting people's attention, and it's awesome.
Yeah, just wow. I've never read Ronin, but now I want to. The visuals in this, the action, the Lone Wolf and Cub vibe that I got from it, because I was a big fan of Lone Wolf and Cub. Just what an issue. Like, I honestly believe, and I've said this to 3 people now, Frank Miller Presents is about to tear up the comic industry if these books are the books they're launching with. I read through this, and while I was a bit lost at the beginning of it, I just got lost in the story after, and before I knew it, it was over. And I'm hoping that the next issue just keeps up this intensity. I thought this was an excellent first issue.
There was a thing that was said, and Dan said it on Jen's show yesterday, and they said it at Retailer Summit, and they've said it a bunch of times. The goal at Frank Miller Presents is to bring people back to buying and reading comics. You know, not buying to collect, not buying because it's the hot commodity variant, or not buying because, you know, any of that kind of stuff that so much of our industry has fallen victim to in recent years. They want to make books that people want to read. And I could think of no better way to do that in the name of Frank Miller than to do Ronin. Now, there'll be people out there who say, well, then you should have started with 300, or you should have started with Sin City, or you should have... Shut up. You're wrong. And I could tell you why you're wrong. This feels like it was written by Frank 20 years ago. Or more. The Frank that existed before 9/11 broke his brain. The Frank that existed when the first volume was written. You know, the Frank that changed the game in so many ways when Ronin went to DC the first time. It feels like it was written by that guy. And it feels like it was drawn by Philip Tan at that time. And it just feels like it's got that energy that only those two guys, with the help of Daniel Henriquez and Dan DiDio and the people that are working over there at Frank Miller Presents, could apply to this book. So I'm going to say that Frank Miller Presents is the Them Crooked Vultures, or any of these other super groups you can think of comics. These are just people who want to make good comics, and oh, by the way, they're the best in the world at it. So this is an absolute gem. It's a amazing follow-up to the original volume of Ronin, which I just reread. And I'm incredibly excited to have had the opportunity to have read issue 1 already, and be able to talk to people about it, and to have been following this publisher now. So that said, this was my favorite book. I love the idea of Dan DiDio building a world and having Frank Miller go, hey, why don't you do this? And just pissing Dan off so he does it. If you guys don't know, later on in this series, the Geek appears. Frank Miller's the Geek. And that was because Frank basically bullied Dan into including him. Right? Like, it's Dan DiDio has this great idea, and Frank Miller's helping him achieve it. And also Frank is doing that. Hey, you remember this guy I made up? It's better than the guy you made up. Why don't you put him in there? And building out this beautiful world that is going to, you know, just tell a good comic story about aliens. Like, it's a world building with aliens. So I'm very excited. I really enjoyed this book a lot.
So first of all, I don't know if you answered this before I get started. When did Ronin originally come out?
1983.
Okay. Okay. So comes to this book. I read the whole thing. I couldn't help it. This was like, I think this one was 56 pages.
All Frank Miller Presents books are 56 pages bi-monthly. So they're every other month.
Yep.
Now, Ancient Enemies is going to come out every month starting in the future with single shot stories that build out the characters. They're character single shots. In the intervening months, that will be regular 32-page, $3.99 comics.
Awesome. Well, this was another hit, and I thought this book was going in a totally different direction until we meet a character. It feels like we meet this one like in the last few seconds, last couple of pages. Then we find out why the book is called what it's called, as you can see from the cover. Uh, I was, man, this was solid art. It was a great story, and while it was a bit longer, it didn't feel longer. It was longer than the other one, but didn't feel longer. I was so immersed in this story. Um, I would recommend both of these books to anyone. Uh, and great job to the teams that worked on both of these. This inches out Bloodshot just because of the page count and how they absolutely took advantage of that in the best possible way. So I really dug this one. This was my favorite book this week too.
For me, this reminded me of, and not in a bad way, the 90s. Not the bad girl thing going on, the creating universes when Image launched.
Hey guys, we made it. We got porn bots. We made it.
Yay! When Image launched and we got Wildcats, or Wetworks, or when Dark Horse created their line of comics with Barbed Wire and X and those characters, or Guerrilla Comics started with Mark Waid. This is what Dan DiDio brings to the table. This isn't Frank Miller's thing. This is the company. I was talking to Kevin Van Hook about this because he's the guy who's working with Dan to do the in-between books. So when in February, when Jeannie comes out, who's the character and the other character that's not the foreground, the background character there is Jeannie. This is Dan's side of it with Frank, meddling and putting his thumb on it. But this is Dan's creations, or as Kevin said, he feels that these are characters Dan has had for a while and wanted to put together if he ever did his own stuff. So I find that fascinating, but this is definitely a world building issue. You meet a lot of characters, you find out what the world is. The cities aren't LA or Boston. They're, specific name cities. They're, new name cities like the DC universe or something like that. This is classic comics. This is the comics that we grew up with, the world building, the new heroes, stuff like that. Dan is tapping into that universe build. I keep going back to that because that's what we don't get a lot of. We got some great comic books coming out, but you don't get a lot of universe building. They're not building a world, they're building a story. And Dan is actually doing the 10,000 foot view, building it slowly, giving us enough to keep us interested, but not just throwing everything out there. It's like we don't know half of these characters' names. We know their real names, but we don't know what their code names are. The guy on the very front there shows up near the end. The closest we get to name to him is First Responder. So but that's what I like about it, is there's so much there for you to come back and go, okay, I need more of this. There's, who is the chick from the other city, and what's going on? Why is she dressed in the 70s? And you've got all these questions that are fun that you want answers to. So.
The greater good.
Yeah, I super agree. And by the way, just as a thing, Frank Miller is looking at all the scripts and looking at the art and giving his input, in a way an artistic director or an executive editor would. Yeah. Which is great, because no matter how you feel about Frank Miller these days, there is no one who has a clearer clarion vision to the characters and stuff he has created than him. So, all right.
John says, thank you for making me poor.
That's our job, John. All right, guys. Remember that this week is also local comic shop day. Some stores are doing that tomorrow. Some stores are holding it till Saturday. I've got to sneeze. So somebody else talk for a second.
All right, guys. Remember, tomorrow's Dan Wickline show. Whole lineup. Thursday will be rebroadcast as we take the day off to celebrate with our family. But we're going to have some great interviews, reruns, stuff like that.
Right. So local comic shop day is either tomorrow or Saturday or some combination of the two. So make sure you head out to your local comic shop and support them. There's a great local comic shop day exclusive Z2 comic about my friend Ani DeFranco, and several other. There's an 8 Billion Genies local comic shop day reprint, which might be the only way you can get #1 these days.
Yeah.
It's worth trying. So head over to your local comic shop. If you don't know where a local comic shop is nearby to you, head over to comicshoplocator.com. Type in the zip code of where you are. If you're visiting family, great excuse to use comicshoplocator.com. Type in the zip code to where you are. It will tell you where there are comic shops nearby to you. Now, because it's a holiday weekend, because Saturday's Small Business Saturday, because of Black Friday, because of all of these things, call them up. Hey, what are your hours? Are you going to be open? So that you know what time to get there and you know what to expect. We always opened early at my store on Black Friday. So I would tell people, hey, if you're just looking to come and browse, don't come till like noon. Because it's going to be a zoo until then. Excuse me. Give them a call. Check it out. And if you're in my area of the world, go Bucks. We'll see everybody next time.